Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's now 2 p.m. August 13, 2024 for the special meeting of the Georgetown Divide Public Utility District. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely. Director Saunders.
Present.
Director Stovall.
Present.
Treasurer Thornborough.
Here.
Vice President Senior. Here. President McDonald.
Present.
And presenting staff today, we have General Manager Nicholas Schneider. Oh, that's my seat. No, right. Yeah. Sit there. That's my shot.
Director Saunders, could you lead us in a pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time I'd like to ask if there's any public comments on the adoption of the agenda.
I'll do that.
Any comments? We'll now close for public comment period. There will be no further comments allowed. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Motion to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? Unanimous vote for adoption of the agenda. For a roll call vote.
Director Saunders.
You don't need a roll call vote. You can just do it. If you want to do it, an aye, you can do an aye.
Aye.
I vote.
Just to,
All in favor? We did that.
yeah, that was to the adoption of the agenda. We did that.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Did that. We did a roll call.
Special meeting workshop item. We will now receive other form first.
We got to open for public comment.
Thought I did it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Sheree.
I have this question. How did all of the customers get notified of these 3 meetings? Because all I got was 3 emails because I'm on the email list, the MailChimp. And because I was at the meeting and nothing was sent in the mail. When we got this a week or 2 ago, there's nothing on here saying anything about a rate study. This is the summer newsletter. There's nothing in here about the November election also. So I'm wondering how do people who aren't on Facebook, and I got one Facebook notification on what's actually happening. And if you're not on Facebook, nothing was sent out through WaterSmart. How did the public get notified?
In ALT, for instance, we have a email blast that's not accessible. That's accessible to everyone who wants to access it on the website. So in ALT,
Those public forum.
No, I'm not ready.
Then we're gonna answer all the
But I'm
questions.
just saying, I think it should be a little more transparent. Legally, you're good, but transparency is what I'm talking about.
Mr. Dowd, go ahead, please.
Inflation, cost of living, fixed incomes. And to quote a famous American, John Paul Jones, I have not yet begun to play.
Any more public comment? No more public comment. I'll close it for public comment period. Thank you. Now we'll open up for the special meeting workshop item. At this time, I'd like public to hold their comments and questions to the end of the presentation, please. So you'll have all the information that might answer some of the questions that you'll have. And then we're happy, staff and the presenters and board, to answer questions you might have. So thank you in advance. Nicholas?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. And this presentation, yes, it did come in today. It was being worked through yesterday and finalized this morning. So what you're seeing is the final of the draft presentation. So this will be also shown at the next 2 town hall meetings. They were noticed very, very well. There's also going to be 2 additional staff presentations at a finance committee and the irrigation committee. So there will be 5 total bites of the apple to look at this cost of service analysis and rate study analysis. So I just want to make sure that the public is aware that please make notes of any questions you may have on the presentation. We will have a robust question and answer period at the end. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sanjay Gwar with Water Resource Economics, who will be going over the cost of service analysis, the financial plan, and a potential rate study analysis.
President, board members, staff, public, it's my pleasure to be here to talk about the water and wastewater cost of service and rate study. We have a lengthy presentation, so I'll be going a bit slow, covering all the slides, making sure we all understand what we're talking about. I'll try my best to be clear too. So today's agenda is to talk a little bit about what is the rate study process, how do you do a rate study, what are the legal environments associated with doing a rate study, what are the factors that we take into account. Then we get into it. We talk about treated and raw water, that enterprise. There's 2 basic enterprise. There's the water system, which is treated and raw water. We talk about the financial plan. What's the financial condition of this business? It is a business. And then allocating the cost. How should we make sure that each customer class, in this case, treated and raw water, gains fair share. Then we get into the rates. And look at the rates, and then we look at the impacts associated with both of those. We're going to do the same exercise with ALT on wastewater. We do the financial plan. We do a cost of service, making sure you have 4 different types of customers in ALT. We want to make sure that 4 different types of customers in wastewater. We want to make sure they all pay their fair share too. And there's a logic and rationality. So in order to conduct a rate study, first, let's take a step back and ask ourselves what we're doing here today. We're talking about water and wastewater service. Water and wastewater service is one of the most capital intensive products there is. So a lot of times we don't think about it, we take it for granted, but there's a whole infrastructure line underground, built hundreds of years ago, been refurbished, been taken care of, to make sure that this essential service is available to our house. Without this service, as we all know, our value of our property would turn to 0. And our well-being would be damaged significantly. And there's a lot of interesting historical context of civilizations that failed to meet these services historically, and you can look at that and look at that. So for our sake, today's discussion, we're talking about how we do a rate study. The first step is we do the policy objectives. We step back and ask ourselves, what are the things we need to take care of in the study? What are the policy? What kind of rate structures do we want to achieve? We did that up front. Second step of the study is the financial planning. This is really about cash flow. It's about how much revenue we generate from rates. What's the cost to provide water and wastewater service? What's the operating budget? What's the capital improvement budget? If there's debt, there's usually a coverage ratio requirement, an obligation to meet certain covenants, and there might be a reserve target too. So we take all those things into account. We've developed a model in Excel. It's non-proprietary, staff has a copy of it. Third step, cost of service. And as I mentioned, this is not a tax. This is a fee for service. And because it's not a tax and a fee for service, it falls under Prop 218, and there needs to be a logic and rationality of the business of providing that service and the rates. So we have to do that proportionality. It's a requirement. If we don't do that proportionality, then we would be in violation of Prop 218, and then we could be sued, because then we would be considered a tax. Next, we go into rate structure, rate design. We ask ourselves, what's the most appropriate rate structure there is? There's lots of different types of rate structures. We design a rate structure that meet your objectives and your goals in the community. And then the last step is the documentation, the important step. We've pretty much gone through step 1 through 4. There are opportunities to do little iterations if needed. But once we get to a point where we feel comfortable, then we would want to write the report. The report is a lengthy document. It'll be tedious. There'll be a lot of numbers, but it provides that transparency. So if anyone wants to understand what we did, also provides that institutional knowledge. You know, a few years later down the road, what happened, what did we do in that study? You can go back and get that report. For Prop 218. So that Prop 218 was the voters. They approved that in the 90s. And through a series of court cases, water and wastewater is considered a property related service. And the key thing here is that there needs to be a proportionality. And so the way I like to look at it is rates can't be arbitrary increases. There has to be a logic. We can't have one customer subsidize another customer. We can't have raw water customers subsidize treated or vice versa. So it needs to be a logic. Cost of service is recommended to be done every 5 years. You could technically do it every 10 years, but it's not proportionality, and you only do it once. So a financial plan, you update all the time because things change, move around. We know that. This is the financial plan is based on information as of today. 6 months from now, something will change. But the cost of service, you don't have to do that every year. Just do it 1 year so that it's set for 5 years and then reset it again. The cost of service is time consuming and then expensive, so I don't recommend doing it every year. Yeah. So treated and raw water, so we're gonna go into that. And so what's the big story here? I'm gonna go in, peel in the onion, but this is, what's going on here. So first thing is that the last rate increase occurred in 2019. So there's rate studies, there's Prop 218 notice, but what the board actually increased occurred in 2019. Since 2019, inflation has been approximately 19%, compounded up. We haven't taken that cost into account in our study. So cost has gone up, rates haven't. Capital expenditure is substantial, and that's a challenge with any old community. We're an old community here, we have aging infrastructure, we have that old car, tires need to be replaced, brakes need to be replaced. Same thing here with a water system. And then demand has been dropping. It's because of the state mandate and regulations as well. So the challenge here is that the rates right now will not cover operating costs by 2025. Next year, we're not going to meet operating costs. The district will be in technical default in its coverage ratio in 2026. When you're in technical default, what does that mean? That means first your credit rating of the agency goes down, gets degraded. It also means that the person who issued the debt could ask for their money back. You made an obligation to do a certain thing and you didn't do it. It also most likely will be challenging for the district to issue debt in the future. Not a good position to be in. So you want to be in favor of that. And then by 2029, the district will run out of money. So that's the big picture here. So if we're interested in maintaining water in our property, something needs to change. So the question is, how much revenue does this need to keep water safe and reliable to our property and our household? So in order to do that, we do the first thing is we ask our reserves, and when we ask how much money we need in the bank to have reserves. There's lots of discussions and policies about reserves, what are the appropriate amount of reserves. This is based on industry standard, where you have an operating reserve, you have a capital replacement reserve, emergency reserve. We're suggesting that we should have $4.3 million. That's on the bottom there. You currently have 6.6, so you're meeting that reserve policy. Reserves are needed or recommended to help customers so that they don't have rate shock. If you don't have a reserve, something goes wrong, you automatically have to increase rates substantially. By having that reserve, you can buffer through things. So the reserves are almost like insurance for the ratepayers to help weather out these different risks that occur. Risks that can occur are drought, fire. You've all experienced that recently. You know what that feels like. Construction cost increases. These are all the things why you want to have reserves. With emergencies and fires, just to touch on that. So FEMA will help us out eventually, but they don't cash flow the issue. So the agency will still need to pay for all the expenditures. FEMA will reimburse. I've heard they've gotten better, but it takes a few years. Take 3 years, 4 years for all that reimbursement to occur. So we need to have that cash on hand. So next, we're going to show you our series of graphs. Maybe if Jessica can help me out and go to the top corner where the blue the revenue requirements with your mouse. Liz, sorry, you're Jessica. Sorry, Liz. Jessica, sorry about that. Sorry about that. Liz. So you see the revenue requirements right here, and you see the bars. The bars are our expenditure, and that line is our revenues. And as you can see, that line is going through the bars. So that means we're not meeting our full costs. We're drawing on reserves, basically. And then, Liz, if you can go now to the one that says fund balance right there. So the dotted line is the reserve target based on the prior graph. The green bars are the ending balance. And as you can see, by 2029, we are negative fund balance. We're drawing on our reserves to fund operating costs and CI capital expenditure. The next one down below, yeah, we can go to that one. That's the coverage ratio. That's one I mentioned about technical default. When you issue debt, you have a requirement. As you can see in 2026 and onward, we're below the dotted line. So we're in technical default. The credit rating of the agency will be peak rated and the borrower could ask for their money back. And the next one is the capital improvement, just to fund the system to make sure we maintain it. So in this case, this is not a good scenario to make sure we have water, safe drinking water available at our house. We would have technical default and the district would be bankrupt. Most likely, if this scenario occurred, the state would take over, and local control would most likely be gone. So that's the challenge here is that, do you want local control or not? So in order to do this, now note, I did present something, presentation like this last time I was here with the board. The increases were much more substantial. We have sharpened our pencil quite a bit. We did hear people's concerns about those increases, so we did lower the CIP, the capital improvement plan. So now these ones are 15% the first year and 10% the following years. By doing that, yeah, Liz, if you can do that, let's do that one chart again, thank you. You see that dotted line now, that's with the 15 and 10%. You can see that we're basically going above our expenditures. So we're basically meeting our needs. We're just sliding by. And because we're doing that, if we go to the fund balance now, the dotted line there, the green bars, we're meeting our reserve target each year. We're just sort of maintaining that. And those reserves are needed in case something goes wrong, and we can fund things quickly. Coverage ratio looking good. We're meeting our covenants there and we're funding our CIP. So this is the proposed scenario that we would like for the board to consider. This is the first step of the study. As I mentioned in prior discussions with you all, that the first step of the study is the financial plan. The metaphor I always like to give is Super Bowl Sunday and how many pizzas you need to order. This is the pizza order. The next step of whenever you do a study is the cost of service, and that's the allocation of the costs. And then the question is just how do you allocate it? Or another way of thinking about it is how many types of pizza should you order? You have some vegetarian friends, you have some vegan friends, you have some meat eaters. Well, how many do you need to order those different? So the question to ask now, next part of the presentation is how much does it cost to provide treated and raw water service? So that's that allocation. We want to sort of come up with an approach that's logical, that makes sense, that allocates that budget into those two buckets. So in order to do that, we do peel back the onion quite a bit. And we start diving into a lot of numbers. So there's a lot of numbers here, but it's all the nuances of your budget. So we get the operating revenue, how much that is, that's $5.3 million. You have some miscellaneous revenues coming in, $564,000. You have your capital expenditure, $726,000. You have the two debt issuance that we want to take into account. You also have some hydro, we have some property revenue. So your rate revenues need to collect $4 million, but all those different items need to be allocated appropriately between treated and raw water. And that's the question, who should pay for what? Some are very simple and easy, Walton, debt service, Sweetwater, so that's treated. We know that. So there's some that are very easy and some are a little bit more complicated. So in order to do that, we get into the details of how much water is being sold between treated and untreated. We look at the acre feet sold. We take into account the number of connections too. Now there's some nuances, some interesting things here. Raw water customers do not receive water all year round, actually receive it only 5 months. So for 7 months of the year, they do not receive it. Treated customers receive it all year round. Treated customers also need a higher reliability because that's for drinking. Raw water could be cut off if something occurs. So because of those factors, we give treated customer a 7 times reliability factor because they get it all 12 months or 7 additional months than untreated customers. So the percentages on the bottom, those allocations like you list, those are the numbers, those are the key factors that we use. And I wanted to show you how we got to those percentages. It's not arbitrary, capricious, I didn't make it up. These are based on data that was provided, and we got these percentages, and we use those percentages when we start on allocating operating budget and capital projects. So based on those percentages, then we peel back the onion, we look at the operating expense, and we ask ourselves, well, what makes sense? Source of supply, how should we allocate that? Well, we say reliable usage, so that means it's more on treated, a little less on raw. Raw water, how should that be? Now, raw water, treated customer is a raw water customer too. And they need to make sure they get that water. So again, we do 70-28, water department and the water treatment, excuse me. And water and transmission distribution for treated water, 100% treated. Admin, we did that based on number of connections, and then hydro, if there's any hydro expense. In this budget, there isn't. There are discussions that there may be hydro expenses in the future. When that occurs, from my understanding, maybe at the time of the next cost of service, that should be taken into account. So capital assets, we look at the total assets in the ground. So the metaphor of the car again is that we're not looking at what you're replacing this year. If you happen to be replacing the tires, changing the brakes, we're looking at the whole system, everything in the system, and asking ourselves how we should allocate it. So we take into all these different accounts. Again, the bottom two numbers, that 83% and 17% is the key factor there. Because we're saying that all CIP in the future, 83% of it is associated with treated, 17% associated with raw, and you can see all the different factors there. So based on that information, those two key aspects, we start allocating costs. So we ask ourselves operating expense, how to allocate that. That's at 88% 12, prior two slide. Same thing with revenue offsets, capital 83-17, prior one. To debt service makes sense, all 100% treated. Hydro, we do it based on water usage. That's mainly raw water, so that's 73% to raw water. And then property tax based on number of connections. So based on all these factors, we get this 90 and 10% of that. We're saying that the expense of this district at this time, based on the cost of service, 90% is treated, 10% is raw water. So based on that information, and this is all the nuances and data, but the bottom line is what's most important, is that we're saying that treated customers on total based on this cost of service, then things change. That's normal for whenever you do a cost of service. This is like a realignment of the car, right? You have anyone who has a car knows that you hit a bump, curve, it gets a little bit crooked. So this is the realignment that we're doing. That we're saying that treated customers should pay slightly less now on the cost of service, and raw customers should pay slightly more. So in dollar terms, it's not that much, but because raw customers revenues is much lower, a percentage is a bit higher. So based on these two factors now, we can then determine how much total revenue. Remember, this is just the allocation. We've talked about the revenue adjustments. We add those two together to get the total. These rates would be effective January 2025 is our goal. So next, and this is the challenge, it is the big one. It's creating a rate structure that's defensible, relatively easy, while addressing affordability concerns. And given the challenge that we have of the revenue adjustment of 15%, right? And all the series of tens, and then this raw treated, how can we make sure we try as best as we can maintain affordability, which is challenging, but I feel like we've done, we'll see, you'll be the judge. So what we first recommend is that we maintain the usage, uniform usage. One of the things that we are recommending, there's two things that we're recommending to that same thing to help with affordability, is that the bi-monthly charge should change. Right now it's normalized, we have to call it normalized, which means 5/8, 3/4, 1 inch all pay the same. I'm suggesting that 5/8, 3/4 pay a different rate, a lower rate than a 1 inch. That's common in the industry. And by doing that, we will help those individuals who have smaller meters, because they'll have a lower rate. The meter is, the way to think about the meter is it's a potential use. One of the metaphors I like to use is internet downloading speed. You can ask your internet provider for they give you different options. You can decide which one to use. You may never use all of it. You may use it once in a while, on when everyone come visits on Christmas. But you decide how to use. Same thing with this meter. The meter is the capacity that potentially be used. So we're suggesting to normalize it to a 3/4 inch. So that will help those smaller customers. It does make the larger meters pay more. I'll be the first to admit that. The second is that the treated supplemental charge should be based on meter size. Right now, every customer pays the same. By doing it based on meter size, larger meters will pay more. And again, what I'm trying to do with Prop 218, with defensibility, is having the lowest rate possible for this 3/4 inch meter, which is predominantly most of your residential customers. And we also recommend maintaining a low income discount. So these next series of rates includes the increase, so it's 15% for both treated and raw, because they're above one big enterprise. We did the cost of service first year, and then the next years are 10%. So the cost of service happens the first year, we do the revenue adjustments, and then all the following years are just based on that. So now we have the series of rates, these are the bi-monthly rates. I am now gonna look at my presentation. So, as you can see right over here, the current rate is $61.76. Now what we're saying is that with the 15%, it will go $72.32 bi-monthly for 5/8 and 3/4. And then the 1 inch would see a much more increase from $61 to $112. And you can see all the several rates. You also have the low income, base charge rates. Then we have the supplemental charge. As I mentioned, the supplemental charge currently is the same for all meter size. What we're recommending is that actually it's by meter size. So that actually goes down for the 5/8, 3/4 inch, as you notice. And that stays the same throughout the whole year, because this collects the revenues that's needed to pay for that debt service. So then it goes to $23.64 for the 5/8, 3/4 inch meter. For the 1 inch, it does go up by $9 and some change. And then you see the commodity. So one of the things that we've been discussing as a policy and as simplicity for communication to the customer is combining those two components together and just have a bi-monthly charge. We think that might be easier for customers to understand what we're doing. This is a policy. So we're definitely looking for your input and direction on which way we should go. But if you can see right over here, what's happening is the 5/8, 3/4 inch currently with the supplemental pay $91.92. Now they'll pay $95.96. So basically a $4 increase. And then the other meter sizes would be paying more, because again, we're doing that goal of maintaining affordability. You also notice there's a column that says number of meters. So as you can see, most of your customers have a 5/8 inch meter, 3,046. And the next largest is 436. And then you see the other customers with the larger meters. Most of those larger meters, based on our discussion, are other government entities. So we're just charging the government, sticking it to the government. So, and so this is one of our recommendations, is to do that. So now, of course, the question is what does this all mean? There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of changes that have occurred. What's happening to my customers and what's happening to me? So what we've done is the first top of this table is a 5/8 inch meter. We have lots of different usages. We also have a percentile, the 10th percentile, 25th percentile, the median, average, 75th, 90th. We also have the CF usage, so you can clearly see that. We have the current bill, the proposed bill, the dollar difference, we're on slide 23, and percentage change. So as you can see, for the 5/8 inch meter, there are increases, right? But none of these are 15%. And that's how much revenue we're investing. So what we're doing is, as I mentioned, our goal is affordability, given the constraints that we have. So these customers won't see as much of an impact, but of course, if they don't see that impact, it has to fall to someone else. And that's where you see it on these other customers. And this is the next one, I want to show you the 1-inch meters. 1-inch meters tend to be new houses that have fire sprinklers. So if you have a newer house, you have a newer house. So we have the different usages, we have the current bill, proposed bill, and then we have the dollar change. And as you can see, the predominant increases are on these individuals.
Sanjay, could I just have you kind of comment on that 1-inch meter? Do we have any control as a district whether or not they get issued a 1-inch meter for fire flows?
No, you don't have any. So the state mandates that new development, have fire sprinklers. And that fire sprinkler, has a lot of capacity that's needed and or a lot of demand that's potentially needed. And that's why you have to put a 1-inch meter in.
Thank you.
So, now we go to raw water. So we're recommending maintaining the miners inches. Now, interesting thing about raw water, there's 8 customers that do not pay property tax. That are, outside your service area and they're grandfathered in, from my understanding. And since they don't pay property tax, we believe they should benefit from the revenues that we get from property tax to offset it. So that's a policy really, but I think we mostly agree with that. And so we want to take that into account. And again, these rates include the 15% and the 10% each year after that. And now what I'm going to show you is the rates actually for the raw inside customers and the outside customers. As you can see, it goes from 77 for a 1/2 inch to 91, a 1-inch, 154 to 183. These are monthly. And then you see the impacts here associated with it. As you'll note, the outside customers, which are 8 of them, will see a significant increase because they don't benefit from the property tax that gets generated in this district. So I'm gonna take a sip here and see if there's any questions from the board about water before I go to wastewater.
And I just want to make note for the public record that previous to the 2017 rate study, those folks that were outside the district did pay a higher rate for their raw water. It was during the 2018 rate study that it was reduced to being inside the district rates. So, but we've gone back and looked and there is no benefit of property tax payments from those 8 customers.
Sanjay, for all of us here that know water, live water, worked with water, I'm not sure about the public, but living in ALT, I didn't know what raw water meant. That's all we had was treated water. Does it make sense to stop any questions during the presentation to tell them raw water is irrigation water?
Yeah, it's irrigation water.
Right, because it's raw water till it's treated.
Correct.
So I'm thinking, okay, but if you say irrigation water, then they'll say, oh, okay.
Yeah, and some people call it canal water.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just all the, from the miners.
It's important to note along that line that treated water customers also benefit from the raw water conveyance system. And that was something that Sanjay did mention in how the raw water rates are developed, is that there is still a reliability factor for getting that raw water to a treatment plant.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that wasn't set last time. They were kind of shared the 12 months and now that 5 months is separated out.
And likewise, the income generated from the hydro is significantly greater when there's raw water, so that income is allocated also to the raw water side, is that correct?
On a percentage basis.
On a percentage basis of what goes through to generate that.
It is correct, and it is the same percentage based upon the reliability factor, but kind of opposite, because at that point, you're just sending more water through,
Right.
which is just power generation. You're not needing to have that reliable water because that can be shut off and it will then adversely affect the rate of revenue generated.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Go back, which is, I guess, page 17, which was. So this, I think, needs to be cleared up a little bit on when is this rate going to show up? On which bill month is this rate gonna show up on?
So,
Cause it's hard to, you know, when I say January first, because we have a partial bill, cause the meters are read in December, that it's not, will go into effect January first, it's gonna go into effect basically on the next billing cycle.
Yeah, so the rates will take effect January first, but you will not see it on your bill until March first.
Okay, so if we could clear that up on the slide, so it sort of lays it out a little better, that,
This is the terminology we use in the industry, that it's effective, but we can say that it affects which bill are effective.
yeah, so that it's a little clearer that, because we're gonna get this pushback, because that's what happened the last time when I was trying to understand what they were talking about, when I realized that they were actually, reading the meter in December, and they were going to start charging us differently at the time until we pushed back when I was Joe Public.
Yeah, we'll make a note of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we ready for all wastewater?
We don't have to ask for-
one more thing, at the very end. So there'd be higher borrowing costs, for insolvency if the state were to take over, plus recall a debt service potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've had experience with dates.
I have.
Okay. You wanna share?
Oh, what, an agency, was running into a factor, that they were gonna get taken over by the state, so another agency took them over to save them from going down that path, but basically they mandate you to do certain things and you're required to get them done, within certain timeframes. Sound good?
You lived it, I haven't lived it, so. I don't know.
Oh, okay, yes.
Then our credit rating would go down and it would cost more to borrow.
Right.
And these numbers here, if you could make it clear to the public that the 15-10-10 is not to exceed, but can be less than.
Correct.
If
So-
we get grants to offset those.
Thank you, Director McDonald, to bring that up. I forgot to mention that. So these are the rate schedules that we put in are, if the board considers them, adopts them, they would be the maximum that the board could adopt. The board could always implement a lower rate. Some of the things that have been discussed, that I've heard about are grants. Another one's water transfers, which is, sensitive. But if you're able to do water transfers, and if that's something you want to do, that would help offset the rate increase.
Thank you.
It was good.
I think under the part where you were talking about if we default and the state could take us over, it might be, we may want to also point out that in the event that happens, we lose our 218 protections.
I was just gonna say that. You go into receivership with the state, you get appointed a administration here. And the board is no longer, there's no more public process. It becomes a state process, much like your PG&E rates.
So this 15% could go up because we're, right?
I would never speculate.
No, I'm saying, but
There's always the
it could be.
potential.
it could. So there's the cap may not be a cap if we were to be taken over. And I just want the public
It could be much worse.
to know.
I mean, I would just say, it's not a stretch of logic to say if they're taking it over because we're insolvent, chances are the rates are gonna have to go substantially up, regardless of the process. And again, they wouldn't be able to, they would have fallen to 218 at that point.
Sometimes you have to connect the dots.
Yeah.
And just so you know, it's ALT.
ALT, we have,
Oh, it's not all, it's it stands for Auburn Lake Trails, just for process.
okay, ALT. Okay, ALT. All right, so,
It's not alternative wastewater.
is that all? I thought it was. Sorry. All right, so, we currently, adopted, last increase from our understanding was 2018. Since then, inflation has been over 21%. Credit that was provided to ALT has been overextended. And so we're at that, we've overextended. So, there's some challenges here. And the real challenge is that expenses are 3 times higher than revenues. So we collect $200,000 in revenue. but our expense is 600,000. And so right there is, I mean, it's not a good story at all. It's challenging, and we would run out of money by 2026. And so how do we deal with that challenge? So we go to the next, so the question is, how much revenue does it just need to dispose of wastewater? So we look at first the reserve policy. The first time we did the reserve policy, it was higher. We have cut this down quite a bit, mainly so that we can minimize the increases. But there are risks with that approach, but we are trying to minimize the increase. So we have operating 33%, capital, 10, 5-year average, and then we have emergency of $50,000, 50K, no, 50,000, excuse me. So that's $235,000. And now what we show you is the challenge that we face. The first one is, let's do that one, thank you. Is we have the bars, and the bars is our expenditures, and that line is our revenue, and that revenue is around 200,000, bars at 600,000. So that line needs to be up above the bars. And because of that, we go to the fund balance, and you see this negative deficit. If this occurred, most likely Alt would bankrupt the district, right? Because it's a small entity, but the water fund would become a bank and basically loan money to Alt. And that's the challenge. And, should Alt be self-sufficient, or should the water customers be a bank? There's no debt, and then there's only a minimum amount of capital improvement funds. So based on that, based on sharpening our pencils, we have been able to reduce the increase. It's still significant and substantial. So there's the first year of 155, but basically we're ripping off the Band-Aid, getting up to the top, and then after that, just doing a 5% increase just to maintain costs. By doing that, we meet our reserve targets, and we basically meet our expenditure needs. So the next question is, how much does it cost to provide the different types of wastewater service? Alt has 4 different basically groups of customers, and we want to be able to allocate the cost and have a logic rationality. So what are the different types of customers? So we have CDS customers that are developed and undeveloped. We have non-CDS customers that are developed and undeveloped. These shows you the number of customers we have. We have the percentages. We use these numbers and these to derive the allocation of costs. So we have the units, we call this in our jargon terminology and rate study, units of service. These are our denominators. And then the next one is our numerators. And then what we've done is we basically look at the budget, we work with staff, and we ask ourselves, well, what costs are just CDS operating costs, that's O&M? What costs are non-CDS operating costs, O&M? What costs are just permit costs? And what costs are capital improvement? And then we ask ourselves, who should pay for those different costs? So, of course, CDS operating costs should be paid for by developed lots. Makes sense. Permit costs should be paid for everyone, and capital improvement CIP should be paid for by CDS. And then the non-CDS operating costs should be paid for by developed lot, similar logic, and they should also pay the permit costs. So if you're undeveloped lot, you just pay permit costs. If you're developed, you pay your operating costs and associated permit. And if you're CDS, you pay your operating costs, permit, and your capital. There's a logic, rationality. And based on that information, we get these rates. Now, these are what we call revenue neutral cost of service. This does not include that revenue adjustment that we just mentioned. But you can see what the different components of the rates are. Based on that information, go to the next slide. And you can see there's the logic, rationality. We get the rates. And so this is the, where we do that 155% increase the first year, then 5% the following years. One of the things that we got input from the board and we were trying to wrestle with is the credit. Who received the credit? How much was the credit? From my understanding, and maybe I'm gonna let someone else answer that question, who received, Nicholas. Do you want to?
Yeah, so it seemed as though the credit did go to more than just the non-CDS customers. It was some more substantial amount to those non-CDS customers, but the CDS customers also received a small break. Where they're at today is very, very close, within $1 and some change of where they were before, before that credit was given. So there was a kind of a credit given, and they raised the rates back up to where they currently are for the CDS lots. The undeveloped lots were actually more today. They're at the same rate today as they were when that credit was given, so they were not given a credit. The developed lots were at $40.72, so they received an $18 and whatever change that is. And then the undeveloped lots in the CDS got the biggest break percentage wise, and they were taken down to approximately they were at $32 before, and they were reduced by about $13. So the biggest credit went to those undeveloped lots, because all they were doing is now being paid, they're just paying permit costs. So any of the undeveloped lots, we still have to report on the permit that they're there, that they exist, but there's no actual maintenance going on those. So there's operations, just not maintenance. And so that's kind of where those credits develop from.
And the next slide now shows the impacts. So we show the current, the fiscal year 25, and the dollar and percentage increase. One thing we do note is that the undeveloped lot doesn't really, pretty much on target. The developed non-CDS is where, from my understanding, majority of the credit occurred. So they see more of an increase because that credit is now taken away. So that's the end of my presentation. Is there any questions about ALT? Excuse me, I said ALT.
Are there options to spread this increase out over time? Yeah, I'm not sure what they are. I mean, we have to. I'm looking for options rather than just one hit.
If you go to the one financial page on the presentation, I believe it's page, what number is that one where you do the?
Yep, you want something?
It's hard, because at some point the water fund will have to become a bank. If you do this, if you space this out at all.
Yeah.
This is the only way to remain solvent in this enterprise fund. So keep going back one, right there, right back.
Yeah.
So if you can get rid of that, if you look at the green bars that are right here.
Yeah.
You see the dotted line? If those green bars are ever underneath the dotted line, that means we are headed towards insolvency. So go back one more slide, or two more slides, I think it is. Yeah, right there, sorry, I apologize. Do you see how that dotted line and then the green bars go way below?
Yeah.
So that right there means insolvency. That's if we do nothing, we can make the bills today, and then tomorrow we're borrowing. So next year we're borrowing. Keep going one more time. And what you'll notice is we have to kind of jump that green bar, because that line is slightly going this way. We have to jump that green bar above it. And so that's where the jump comes. If we did play around with other percentages, and there's always other options, but in our estimation, it's better to do one big one in the front and then to spread the little ones out afterwards.
Thank you.
So, Director Star, you had your hand up, but
No, so
okay, go ahead.
Thank you. What I'm missing is, on the non-CDS customers, that there's no O&M and there's no extra cost there. When you have labs and you have an employee and you've got equipment, and so I don't see that included in here.
Can you go to there's two different O&M sections. Going, keep going,
I have overnight
keep going.
So
wastewater cost allocation 34, that's where I see no cost.
Okay, just.
You're right there.
So right there, if you notice, there's non-CDS O&M and there's CDS O&M.
But there's no cost for CDS for Okay, but then what's a CIP? Because we've spent money.
So the CIP is different.
We have spent money out of, I guess what now I'm seeing is our big picture money, not Overland Lake Trails money. So we have costs for inspections, equipment, labs that we've spent.
All those costs are in this enterprise fund, so none of those lab costs that you're referring to come out of the water costs. If you're online, can you please mute your phone? We're getting a little bit of feedback here in the office.
I think it's Bob.
So there are two different lab costs,
No,
so.
I understand that, and that's what I'm saying, but I don't see. Since we're breaking out, these are costs for Auburn Lake Trails,
Mhm.
not costs for the water enterprise fund. This is
Correct.
the wastewater enterprise fund, basically Auburn Lake Trails wastewater fund.
100%.
And so we have now, it's broken into CDS and non-CDS. We have costs that are associated with that non-CDS,
Correct.
and I don't see that.
So on this slide, if you look at the slide right here, do you see anywhere the X's are? Those are the markers that we're costing. So in CDS O&M, we have developed lots are paying.
So we have nothing at the last,
CIP is different than O&M.
I get that, but we have expended
We
funds.
do not have CIP on the CDS, so we can't do a project. I'm gonna pick on Director McDonald
No,
because
I'm talking non-CDS. I'm not talking CDS. I can see the little X mark that you acknowledge the fact that there is costs there.
I'm trying to answer your question. I'm trying to make sure I understand. You're saying that there's no CIP costs for non-CDS customers.
Correct.
There is no CIP projects that we can do at a non-CDS customer's house,
Do we spend any money?
not CIP money. O&M money, yes, not CIP money. So you're looking at this right here is about right here. I don't know.
No, I
You
got
have
it.
non-CDS O&M. That would be dipping the tanks. That would be doing the inspections, doing the permitting. Okay, right?
That's CDS, that's CDS right there.
But if you look below, there's also non-CDS O&M. So there's two different, the first two lines, CDS O&M, non-CDS O&M.
Uh-huh.
So that non-CDS O&M is where we do all the work to dip the tanks, to work with the customers, to do the smoke testing, to do anything that is in that situation. Those are all in that non-CDS O&M. There's no projects that we do with non-CDS that are global projects. We only do global projects with the CDS customers.
Okay.
We did put the grant for the septic, and I didn't see that captured.
So any of the grant funded CIP, we did not include in this because we are anticipating receiving money for those projects.
So they're loans, basically not grants.
They're loans, not loans. We're only getting grants. So that.
No, remember we did the septic that people can apply for.
Oh, that is, you're talking, I understand what you're saying. So that is part of the budget. That is in the operations budget, that loan. So it is included in the, it'd be under O&M or permit management.
And then the other thing I wanted to bring up was at the page, on page 29. If we could clarify that a little better, explaining what the reserves was before and who was in the reserves, and now the reserves are down to 235, and that reserve is just for the CDS customers, just to explain that the non-CDS
So,
does not have a CIP reserve anymore. So
yes, but it is.
there's a
one-
reserve for them. but-
It is one reserve for the whole enterprise fund. It's very similar to how the water and the raw water is set up on our water fund. Because they're tied together as one enterprise fund. There are two different rates, just like in the wastewater, CDS and non-CDS pay two different rates. There is a capital replacement, capital improvement plan reserve that would generate just from those CDS customers, but that is not necessarily being paid for by the non-CDS folks. And you can see that because we break that out on what a monthly bill looks like. If you can go, think it's 3 slides, maybe 4 slides. You know what the slide that is with the $5 from CIP? Keep going, keep going, keep going, right here.
35.
So if you notice here, this kind of answers a lot of those questions about who's paying for what, or who should be paying for what. So on the CDS O&M, that's the $59 that they pay for the work that's done on the leach fields, any of the pipelines, any of the lift station work. Then you have non-CDS O&M, which is $18.14. That's all the work on dipping, on working with the customers and any kind of individual homes that we work with. Then you have permit management, which is the same for everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a developed lot, undeveloped lot, non-CDS, CDS, it's all the same cost across the board to pay for the permit. And then finally, the CIP cost is only being charged to the CDS customers, and it's only $5 in that bill. Because what we're trying to do here is develop if we have to do a project, i.e. the lift station upgrade, or if we in the future want to put in a wastewater treatment plant, those are only going to benefit CDS customers. They do not benefit non-CDS customers, so we would never ask a non-CDS customer to pay for those types of projects. Because those are only going to benefit those CDS customers.
And will a budget reflect the CIP reserves and the reserves?
So the CIP reserve will be reflected in the budget, and we can make a notation that it is for CDS customers.
Yeah, because if you want to have that separate this way, if I want to ask.
That's
what-
Director Thornborough.
Okay, now, in all this, I didn't see any mention at all about the usage rates, so we're not touching that, we're leaving it at where it is now.
For water you're talking about?
Right, for treated water, yeah.
Yeah, it was here. It was on slide,
Did I miss that?
yeah,
21.
slide 21, thank you.
All right, let me see where that is.
It was on the bottom.
10%, 15, 10, 10 thing? Yeah.
Oh, so those are also going up?
Yeah, everything has to go up. I mean, we're
Talking about the consumption water rates?
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing that's not changing is the supplemental. Though they're changing in the sense of how we assess it, but the amount of revenue that we collect.
Okay. All right.
You do summarize those usage levels, I think, slide 23 right after that.
Yeah,
Based on
the
those
impact.
Consumptions would be within the.
Correct.
Well, okay, well, I missed that one line down there. Let me see. And my second question is, okay, so we're not committing to anything at this point in time. And during workshops, we're not committing to anything, so we're not gonna commit to anything until after we get the final report.
So
Is that correct?
this is an authorization for him to start writing the report that will reflect this information. So there is nothing going out to like a Prop 218. There's no public hearing set. Those public hearings will be set for a later date once the report has come back.
Okay, so the answer to my question is no, we are not committing to anything until.
The only thing you are committing, I mean,
Is to generate the report.
is generate the report and the funds that you're paying me to
Yeah.
do that. So that is a commitment, I would argue, because if you change something, then
No, I'm talking, when I say committing, I'm talking about we're committing to these rates.
not right now.
That's my question.
But it is, you're committing,
I get that.
yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
Sanjay? Close down. Go ahead, Director Seaman.
Also, it was my understanding that we were going to make this commitment after we had these next two meetings to get the public's input on,
So you're welcome to, all of the 3 meetings are set up exactly the same. At any point, during any one of the meetings today, tomorrow, or Thursday, that commitment can be made. So we are open to the commitment being made on Thursday after input from the public.
so we are not voting on anything today.
You are, like I just said, you are welcome to vote on it today. You can vote on it tomorrow, or you can vote on it Thursday. It is completely.
Yeah, and I would just say, I don't think that there's
Right.
actually a vote that's being contemplated. I think the idea is opportunity to get the workshop, get feedback from the public, get information from our consultant and for the board to provide some direction and some consensus advice on, yes, keep, go forth and continue to do the work, bring the report back.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing that this is about. So I shudder to even use the word commitment, because I think that kind of represents something that is beyond what's even been agendized here today. It's really just information, discussion, and direction.
Okay,
To kind of continue to do the work.
because that wasn't what I was hearing before.
Understood. Yeah,
Okay,
I just want to clarify.
thank you for the clarification.
Sanjay? Could you clarify Director Thornborough's question to me? It talks about a 15, 10, 10, 10, and on 19, and you go to page 20 and it reflects the different meter sizes. How does that, what's the base charge versus the consumption rate? Because when I look at this, is this the base rate or the consumption?
So this is the base charge, this is the fixed charge
Fixed charge.
based on your meter size.
Got it. What about the water consumption rate?
That's on the next slide, slide 21.
Okay,
So at the bottom, do you see the very, very bottom? It says water
Oh.
usage rate for CFS.
oh, yeah, I do.
So you have three components associated with your rates for water.
Yeah,
You have a base, we call it supplemental. Those two are fixed charges based on meter size,
mhm.
and then you have a consumption charge.
Oh, that's the one I was missing. Okay. I have a question. Somebody's gonna ask, okay, what does this mean to me? Okay, do you have a sample bill like I did mine now?
So it's on here. Keep going through, keep looking through.
Slide 23.
So right there.
I mean,
So-
okay, the sample bill, 9%, okay,
Yeah, so no, if you look at, so if you have a 5/8 meter,
yeah.
which is 3,400 of our customers.
Mhm.
And if you know you're a low water using customer, which, you know, we hope that most of you are,
Mhm.
you're gonna have about a $5 per bill month, per billing cycle increase. Even if you're using all the water you can possibly use, you're looking at about a $25 increase at a 5/8 meter.
Okay,
So depending on where you fall in the water usages, you're gonna fall somewhere within those. And we did look at the different water users and how much they use. So, you know, if you're an average user, it's about 1470 per month, if you see that.
when I did, okay, I see that now and I remember seeing it before, and I came up with 2% and I came up with $4 on my bill.
So, yeah, it's gonna be like, if you're
If
low,
you don't
then
use any water, then yeah.
No, I use it, but then when you look at ALT and you add on that additional charge, it's a 25% overall bill increase.
but we have to look at those two separately
I
because
know.
we're paying, I know you're gonna look at it as your bill, that's the bill you pay. But
That's
when
a
we
bit-
look at it, they are two separate funds that we have to fund.
But when we have the ALT meeting tomorrow that hopefully people will go to,
You're not having a minute.
it's with right. When the ALT meeting, residents are invited per my email blast to the facility,
The meeting, cool, yes.
there's a better chance that they're gonna be there. And so
So if
what
you-
does that mean to them?
Correct.
To me, it means in my bill, it's gonna go from 195.69 to 246. So it's a $50
So
increase.
if you want us to, we can create another table for ALT customers and show the total impact for water and ALT.
The impact is much greater than the community at large, and to me, it's $50 from 200 to 250, so they might like to know that.
Okay, so if you want, we can do that and have that presentation ready. And that would be for tomorrow or?
Well, it'd be for both,
I
but
would say put
but
it
the
in both.
odds are, the proximity to where my community is to where the facility is, it's 2 to 3 miles versus 10 or 15 miles, so yeah, it's probably pertinent both places for sure.
Okay, so both, okay.
And then and I heard there was questions whether, or suggestions, I could go either way on it, breaking up all the charges, as they are, keeping them that way or lumping them all together. So the zone charge is really ALT zone charge.
I'm
Zone
not
charge,
clear
correct.
about.
Yes, it's called zone charge.
Yeah.
We call it the zone.
ALT zone.
We call it zone under bill.
So,
Okay.
you know, somebody from ALT might not know that it's just for them. Okay,
That's we can
Yeah.
mention that. That's why we have on here, it's the ALT wastewater, because there's only wastewater within the
okay.
ALT.
And as long as we're keeping things separate, it says supplemental fee. Is that the water treatment plant supplemental fee?
correct.
Can we abbreviate so people know what that is?
So it is listed on your bill as supplemental fee, I believe.
Yeah, I'm only asking, people don't know what that is.
So we will discuss it to pay off the
Yeah.
loan.
You know, like WTR treat plant so that people know. And then, that's the only thing I got there.
Well, the sub, yeah, that we can narratize that.
You know, because we're in the business of it and
Yeah, I
this is
understand.
jargon.
We-
So confusing.
I don't have any more questions, comments. Jessica?
I was just saying, we have room to put an explanation on the bill rather than changing the boxes and what the actual terminology of those fees are. We could define them below. That's possible.
If it doesn't cost any more, it's no problem. Just clarity, but yeah. Possible.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment. I went back and looked at what my social security check has gone up. And since 2020, it's gone up 20%. Since 2022, it's gone up almost 18%. And so when I look at what I get as a fixed income, I can afford this.
Are you at?
What I can't afford is PG&E. And I look forward to what this district is gonna do to address those PG&E costs, because I need to do the same thing.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Are you adding your irrigation in there too?
This is what I get in social
No,
security.
no, but when you're looking at your increases, are you adding your, we're the only irrigation customers here. So we're having two increases, basically, one on our potable water, one on our raw water.
I was looking at the 15% increase first year. And I'm looking at back what I've got in social security, so.
Any more board comments, questions? Okay, now I'll open it up to the public. Mr. Dow.
Yeah, Stephen Dow, thank you, Sanjay, that was a great presentation, I appreciate it. You also gotta remember that we're still paying the $30 for the Sweetwater treatment plant, that's for another 15 years, it'll be added on top of this.
No, it's not. No. So that's what we're showing you on the sheet. Is
That's
it,
all included?
can you leave the presentation up?
Okay, and then we got these
Let me,
bars here.
I just want you to really, I want to make sure that you understand this before you finish your comment. So can you go back to the water? And I'm not gonna take your time. I'll give you the time at the end, I promise.
In other words, you're not gonna get the beep.
Yeah, you'll get beeped, but I'll let
You
you
won't get the
have,
hook.
this will be like Congress. I'll give you, you can reclaim your time.
Okay, we keep it right there.
No, keep going.
Oh, that one there.
Hold on, let me get to a spot first, please.
Need the supplemental.
Keep going forward.
Going backwards. So we're not paying the
Forward.
Sweetwater treatment plant.
Hold, just give me
Steve,
like,
look on page 22.
keep going forward. Keep going.
Yeah.
Right, keep going, right, okay, right here, stop. So this is your supplemental charge. Currently, you're paying $30.16. We're proposing you pay $23.64. Now go one more. This is the rate you pay now. Typically, for your base charge is $91.
That's
We are,
including
that is including the base charge is $95 is what we're proposing it raises to, $4. That is it.
That's including Sweetwater.
That is including Sweetwater.
For 1 year,
For once,
for the
Wait.
first year.
correct.
You can see it. Or it goes
Okay,
across.
all right.
Yeah.
Fine,
So it is included in there.
let's get back to this one here.
Yes.
What slide?
Tell them what page that is.
Page 10. What gets me is, yeah, that's good too, we're the next one down. We're starting out on 2025 and everything's fine and dandy. We haven't had a rate increase, well, we did the rate increase 5 years ago. And we only had one additional increase since then, and we're doing fine.
We are not doing fine, sir.
That's not fine?
No,
That's
see
the
do you
proposed-
see the bars that
I
are
see the
there?
bar.
Those bars are what we need to have. Those are we don't have.
We're doing good.
But that's.
But then
that's
next on the line that says we're not gonna be doing so.
Go back.
Can
I don't trust
can I say something?
I'm
That-
talking.
No, I'm just trying to clarify, that's all.
Use the
I'm not
cursor.
trying to argue with you. We need to clarify, because that PowerPoint slide assumes the increase goes in effect. So I think we need to go back one slide.
Yeah, go back one slide. That's this one here.
Go back again. There
We're
it is.
doing fine. We're doing fine for the last 5 years. Everything's hunky dory.
Do you see the
Things are
green,
getting done.
do you see the green bars on the right hand side?
Yeah,
Those are how much money we have left. That's how much money we have in the bank. After next year, we start borrowing from our reserves. There was a comment that we have $10 million in the bank. In 3 years, that $10 million is gone.
But we just put a whole bunch of money into into account to get interest rates. We're getting $500,000 or whatever.
Steve, if you don't have money going into your checking account, you can't keep writing checks though.
See the dash
Okay,
line?
and then another thing, fine, okay, all right. So now you're gonna raise the raw water on the irrigation customers. You're gonna, in the past, the last 5 years ago, you raised the rates and you lost, I don't know how many, 50 inches or something. A whole bunch of people just dumped it. So you're gonna raise it again, you're gonna lose everybody. Nobody's gonna get raw water. Maybe a couple people have horses and they're mad. I mean, they gotta feed their horses. And they're not gonna be able to grow grass. So you're gonna lose a lot of people. You're thinking, oh, this is fine, everybody's gonna go for this. Nobody's gonna go for it. And then another thing about the raw water, the ALT plant. We had $1.5 million in an account a few years ago, so you decided to get rid of that overabundance and give it back to the customers. Now we're hurting over there in Upper Lake Trails. What's going on? I mean, my God, what's happening?
That was all before this.
I've been here every day and everything's been fine and dandy, and all of a sudden now it's the sky's falling. I don't understand it. Something's wrong here. It needs to straighten out. The sky is falling. That's all that's going on. Bunch of BS. Sorry, but the sky isn't falling. Thank you.
Sheree?
Okay, my first question is on page 16. I went back and looked at the 2017 rate study and the source of supply and raw water has flipped percentages. The traded was 21 and 21 and raw was 79.70. Is that because you're basing it on customers and not usage?
We're basing it on reliability.
Okay, and then on page 20, the low income base rate, you are switching, going from 25 to 50%. Page 20. Okay, then on page 24, I think it should say, the eight outside the district customers do not pay property taxes. They pay property taxes. GPUD just does not get property taxes. Their
Same
portion
thing.
goes to somewhere else. They
Same
pay property taxes. And then do those 8 people know they're outside the district? Because I ran into several people that didn't know it.
I can't answer that question.
Okay, and then on page 24, I think it should say first year. That's the top one on 23. 3-day customary bi-monthly impacts to just say for the first year. Or at least give us the 5 years out. So you're only showing that. And then I really take I get mad when I keep hearing we're gonna be bankrupt in 5 years when we have $10 million in the bank.
We will be 100% bankrupt in 5 years.
You will not, you have money in the bank. You have allocation. I'm not saying we don't need a rate increase, but to say you're gonna be bankrupt and then we're gonna be taken over is a long use of word. Sorry. That's what they
Sheree,
did
I would
last-
really, can you go back to that first sheet so I can explain what that means? The first one with the green bars that go down.
I know we're gonna be in the deficit.
No, we are not gonna be in a deficit. We are gonna be taking that money out of the bank. That green bar, that below, when it goes below, that means you're taking the $10 million and it is getting spent. It is not gonna be there in the bank anymore, is what we're trying to say.
Right, but you're not gonna be bankrupt. by
Right
that.
there in
Just saying the
year,
word.
in year
It's the
5.
word. It's a
It's
deficit.
the word that she's having a problem with. And
But it is bankruptcy. In
Right.
year 5, we have zero money and we have to borrow, we have to generate debt to continue to operate the district. So it is not, it's not a word. So where we don't like to
In
hear,
5 years, there's no money in any account.
if you look where it's going below the line, you see the fifth bar
Yeah.
that is going below the line. The line is the zero line.
Okay, but
So when
that's
it-
probably already, also including all high salaries, again, another 10-20% salary increases, that's what's including in that. Anyway,
3 minutes are up.
thank you.
Hey, here's the thing.
We,
I got the verbal cue.
Oh,
we,
I wanted to hear the thing.
I was
Can
ready.
anyone see my hand?
we see your guys' hands. We have people in the room that we are still working with.
Yes, what's your
Can you
name?
answer my question?
You wanna, go ahead.
No, we're doing in-room and then we will take public comment remotely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sir, your name, please.
My
Thank you.
name's Scott Harris.
Thank you.
This is my first meeting, so. I'm
Thank you for being here.
Taking a catch up.
Yes, sir.
I have a question because, can't think of anything in my life that I haven't had increase in the last few years. Why is, if you can answer this question, why has there not been any rate increases since 2019? That's 5 years going on 6. And, there's not much out there in our life that hasn't gone up. And with the inflation being at 9% 2 years ago, I thought that should have lit a fire under you guys and said, hey, we got a problem here. And we need to address it last year, not now.
I'll try to handle some of this, and I think I might need help from maybe Director Saunders or someone else, but in the past, the increase was questionable as to the numbers that were used to determine the increases.
Is that the report that you were talking about? The rate?
Yeah, the whole rate.
Yeah.
Is that on the website?
Yes.
This is my understanding, a little before my time, but right in there. But
I know you can't be specific.
no, this is generally, but I'll miss a few points, but.
Yeah.
So then, when I was on the finance committee then, we could not get from the current board or staff the numbers to substantiate or the data to go into the 218 to determine the increases. We asked for 18 months for the numbers, and they stonewalled us and didn't want to provide it. We offered to put our own men on the computer to try to call out the information, and it was not made possible to us.
Okay.
When we were inquisitive and asked too many questions on all this, they disbanded the finance committee. Some of us ran for the board for transparency and have the next rate increase data driven, so that the numbers that we're using are actual and factual, and we could show the customers and through the town halls and all of this, what we're doing now, which really didn't happen before. This is the proof, the graphs, the charts, the tabular data, everything. And so, but what I don't know exactly, but instead of doing it in like 2 years, so 18 months was wasted, it was stalling. So that was a portion of it, like a third of the time. Then it took months and time to get the survey, all the work done to prep for the data to be provided to his group to call them, and come. So it just took time, the wheels of government so it took an extra couple of years after the 18 months. We got behind the curve, not similar to, but something like we gave that credit to the ALT people
Right.
for 5 years instead of 2 or 3, and now we're in trouble again.
Right.
So that in a nutshell, now we're trying to make it right, but now we got behind the curve again. So ideally, those anticipating you're behind the curve in the community might have put money for a rainy day for something like this, because it's happening.
Oh, yeah.
And you probably are ready.
Yeah.
But that's what I just wanted to say. The customers have had a break for a couple of years they shouldn't have had, and now we're having to play catch up. And and any other board member like to comment on that? Why the extra 4 years to this?
You're not the only one, because I'm involved in another situation like this, and they're $199 million in the hole.
Director Son,
And
Thornburg?
so it's pretty common from what I'm seeing.
Well, here's.
Sanjay, I have a suggestion. When these numbers go negative, can you turn it red?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because, to me, that if I'm looking at this and I'm just showing up tomorrow night, it's all green. I mean, green means everything's good.
Yeah.
Green means in the black.
I mean, this is on fire, so I need you need to turn it red.
Okay.
Because there's gonna be a lot of people there, and they're gonna be confused.
Director
Hey, Joe,
Thornhill,
there's green up there, it shows you have money, what are you talking about? No, it should be red,
Director Thornhill would have to add a follow-up.
that's just a click on the.
I like that.
As far as why there hasn't been a rate increase, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, you got to do a 218 to do a rate increase. Okay, so what happened was, and also per 218, you cannot charge more than your costs are.
That's right.
Okay.
It's a tax and.
Exactly. So back in 2017, when they went through the rate increase that started on 2018, after the first year, we took in more money than was anticipated. So the rates were froze, and for that same reason, the rates were frozen at one time during that. Okay, so then after that 5 years, you can't, for the last 2 years, we couldn't raise rates because we had to do another 218.
Mhm.
And that was delayed for a few reasons. Number one, we're going through general managers. We did a castle study. There's these studies that take a lot of time. And so there was a variety of reasons of why the rates didn't go up in those 2 years. We have to do the 218 in order to raise the rates, and that's what we're doing now. So that's why there hasn't been anything in those last 2 years. So
Just as a question, this other utility district that I'm involved with, they predict, with high confidence that they can at least obtain 50% in the form of grants. What are you guys doing to be submitting grants for this now and in the future?
Nicholas?
If you mind, you know, you take that. So since I got here, so before we got here, we had about 500,000 that we've gotten in grants. Since I've been here, I started in September of 22. We've gotten $2.8 million in grants that are in the bank. We have 8.8 that is a couple weeks away from coming to us. We have a $3 million grant that is in process that is going to come from Cal OES. We also have right now a $7 million federal appropriation we've applied for that would generate a hydro facility up at Stumpy. And we have a $20.5 million appropriation to do water supply reliability work.
So those hydro, those are revenue generation.
That is correct.
operations, Is that correct?
100%, yes.
Okay. Why aren't there any notes about this in here, even though it's not guaranteed?
Because I can't guarantee it. Until we have a check in our hand or a letter that says this is guaranteed to you, I would never wanna
So
be,
that's kind of like a prohibition.
I don't wanna say something until it happens.
So-
Okay.
I mean, so I made a comment earlier that these rates are under property, these are the maximum amount.
Right.
And then if we do get those grants, which we hope we do,
Okay,
then the board could implement a lower rate.
okay. Well, yeah, that's obvious. If you
Yeah.
have more money.
Yeah.
You've got relief.
Correct. But we can't count on something we don't know.
I think it would be in the district's best interest to at least be able to make a comment about that. And
Sure.
just as you said, because I have a feeling there's gonna be some pretty pissed off people.
Yeah, we could definitely make a comment about that. We have tried,
A little bit.
we've tried to do just about anything we can to generate extra revenue. We've changed our investments. We've changed our grants. We've changed how we do, potentially doing water transfers, other things that we've tried to generate revenue.
Are you able to use any mechanisms such as money market or CDs? and
Yes, we
stuff
do
like
that.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
I just have I didn't use my whole 3 minutes.
I thought,
how much do you have left?
Quick question.
then you next, Mr. Pro.
The bills do not show the water usage costs.
It's
Shows the amount.
it's calculated in that usage
No,
amount.
I mean, our bills do not show it, and they did prior to, who was that temporary guy we had? He took it off when he went and changed the billing. We had like the 2.0268 per cubic feet. Does not show there, and it does not show up on the website. That's up to date. It's still the old rate set.
The amount per cubic feet, yeah,
Yeah, the amount.
I recall that.
Yeah, that was on our bill, and he changed the billing. It got shipped out and it disappeared. I got it like 3 times.
I think that's now, right?
It's a cost.
It's on page 20 something here.
So
Yeah,
are
but I
you
mean,
saying that the amount of the charge for a?
No,
Let me ask you, I'm trying to clarify, so hold on, let me ask a clarifying question, the whole thing, before you answer me, please. Are you saying that the amount that you're paying for the commodity charge is not on your bill? Or it is, you do not see how much water usage as a whole commodity that you use?
No, you see the 268 or 5,000 cubic feet of water, you don't see the 0.0268, which is the current.
The commodity charge per unit.
Per unit charge.
Per unit does not show, which it did before, and I've brought this up numerous times. It's just, and it's not on the website,
We can rectify that, that's an easy.
unless it got changed recently.
Does our municipal water bill clearly show what size supply we have?
Meter. But do they show the meter size of the bill? I'm not sure.
I know the irrigation.
He's got a bill right here.
Oh, let me see
Does it
about.
show it?
I don't think it does.
That's how it.
It does not show your meter size.
And we,
And it doesn't on irrigation either.
There's people out there that are gonna be.
Yeah. Right, that needs to be, 20, I think it's 22. yeah.
Likely, I'm not gonna guarantee, but likely you're 5/8, because 90% of our customers are. It's based on the amount of water you need for your size. It's a square footage size, and then, as was stated, newer homes require fire flow. So that's where the one is. So if it's, how old is your home? How old, you know, your house is built?
Mine was built in 83.
You're right.
Should be.
Probably 3/4 or 5/8, but we can verify.
You have a small, like a relatively small lot or large?
I have 2 3/4 of ditch water.
No, the house.
And it's a half inch, I know. No, it's half inch on ditch water, but the house, I don't know what size it's probably.
That's 1,200 square feet.
Yeah.
The only reason I would say we took it off, and I'm not justifying, I will have it put back on. We'll find a place to put it. That's an easy change to the
Yeah,
bill.
that's simple.
It was potentially because there used to be tiered rates, and there's not, it's one rate, and there's no tiered rate. So it was, and I'm just speculating. I've only been here 18 months, or well, almost 2 years, well,
Yeah.
whatever I've been here. I'm just speculating, but that's an easy change. We can go back in and change that, and we could probably add your meter size as well.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, comment, please.
I think the information she's talking about that changed was when we implemented Tyler ERP system from Mom. I don't think that we ever had it on Tyler.
We can, me and you can look at that in.
Oh, yeah, it was advertised.
Thank you very much. I believe Mr. Pro, I don't see a hand, but I know he's out there. Go ahead, Mr. Pro.
Yes, you guys keep muting me. I sent a letter in with comments to your general manager today. I haven't heard that he's spoken at all regarding that comment letter that I sent in today. There's an agreement between the board, the Georgetown Divide Taxpayers Association, and myself individually. This has not been addressed. It has been brought to your attention, the board's attention, on numerous occasions by myself and other members of the community. Why isn't the board acknowledging this stipulation that was signed by the board and the members of the Georgetown Divide Association that the board is not living up to? Now, my question is, how much do you think the impact of the board's lack of due diligence in implementing the agreement that was signed? I'm totally at a loss. I'm trying to save the money, the district money. All I see is the district trying to take more and more water away from the citizens of the divide, the whole of the divide, whether they're ratepayers or not ratepayers. You're drying up the whole district. I'm trying to save you money, and all you're trying to do is sell the water down to Westlands. This is just brutally corrupt. You have so many things that are out there that the district citizens as a whole do not even know about. It's what you guys don't tell the people that the people need to know. I have filed a California Public Records Act request with the district today, asking for all documents from, I think it's 2017, when your first Prop 218 originated. Many of the board members are there, have signed this agreement, know of this agreement, and yet are doing nothing about this agreement. It's gonna come to a stop. Please, 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 take this settlement agreement, abide by it, so that the public will know what this district is doing. We, Georgetown Divide taxpayers and myself, will go forward and circulate all this information to the district and anyone else that wants this in a timely manner, so that they can understand just where the money is going in this district, because the public.
Thank
And
you,
I got
Mr.
muted again.
The 3 minutes timer was up. Um,
You're welcome.
You're welcome to,
Finish his comment.
oh, finish your comment, please. You're unmuted, Mr. Pro. Go ahead, sir.
He's muted. Now he's unmuted.
Oh, no.
Please be brief and, you can unmute it. If you click on the three dots.
It only lets me ask.
Well, he can unmute himself.
Mr. Pro, if you could hear us, please unmute yourself. You may finish your statement or comment, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Please be brief. Thank you.
Yes, I'm trying to do the right thing by the district. The district seems to go out of its way not to inform the public as to what it's doing. You've got a hole through the mountain that's ready to collapse, if it hasn't collapsed already, that there's no talking about it. Every money-making operation that this district has, the district goes out and gives it to someone else to make the money, and then we get a small percentage of it. That's why we're not making money. We're making more money you can shake a stick at, but the district just doesn't want to tell the public because they like what they've been doing for the last 40 years. Thank you very much.
Noted. Thank you, Mr. Pro. Okay.
There was other comments.
Also,
We did see a few other hands raised online. If you would like to make public comments at this time, please do so. Mr. James and I believe Bob also had your hand up, so if we could just have maybe Bob, would you like to still make a comment?
Here, he's muted.
Just leave it done.
Did you ask?
Okay, Bob, thank you. Go to James. If James, did you still have a comment you'd like to make?
You're unmuted, James.
Okay. If there's any other public comment. You can just ask for any other public comment at this point.
Any other public comment at this point?
We close public comment.
We close now for public comment. Thank you. Any other board member like to?
Yeah, I was just gonna say with the public input, and that's also gonna be significant going forward, is if we make sure we have the bill usage on the CF usage rate, and if people can get their meter size, because
I'm already, I'm gonna take care
if
of
there's
it.
anybody that has a 1-inch meter that wants to downsize, then if they have that information beforehand, that's
So that's, you have to be careful because there are some that are not allowed.
right.
Based
Those
on.
that can legally based on their flow. So because they didn't know, because some were misinformed, as I was.
Is there a charge for them?
There would be a charge, yes.
Thank you. Director Thornton?
And we're not, well, before the rates were, the usage rate went up if you use more and more and more. And
As a tiered rate, yes.
right now, we're just keeping that flat at the same rate, no matter how much you use.
Correct.
Just want to make that clarification.
I'll just clarify, the slide that we showed just shows your water usage based on how much you use. It doesn't show that you're actually getting charged more per cubic foot you're using. It's just trying to show that your bill potentially would be about this much, but it's all the same commodity charge.
Okay.
So just from the staff, we did understand that there we would like to take public input we are not obligated at this time to give direction to Sanjay. But there is at some point, we would like to have some direction given to Sanjay if these numbers are appropriate and we should start to work on getting a report together. We can obviously, as was stated previously, wait till Wednesday or Thursday. But at some point, we would like a consensus from the board that we can continue to work on this as a written report.
We could wait through Wednesday or Thursday, but we wouldn't be meeting again until after that.
We would have to have something by
Meeting.
Thursday, please.
Or we have to have a special meeting called.
These are all special meetings. These are all special board meetings.
She
Director,
means another one.
yeah.
We can do
In other
that.
words, can we do it now or do it later, right?
I would just recommend you use these workshops to inform the public. And then if the board is prepared to provide any feedback, guidance, direction to the consultant while he's here in person to give that feedback, Thursday would be appropriate because at that point you've kind of heard from different cross sections of the district.
I agree.
Director Stovall?
Does that have to be identified on the agenda as an action item?
And no, it's not an action item. It's described on the agenda as provide direction on the rate analysis to the board, and it's so described tomorrow and Thursday as well. So it's very common to provide an update information on proposed options, proposed rate design, and then for the board to give direction on, this is good, this part's not good, now we've heard the feedback. So because you're not voting on any document or any rates, it's really just about giving direction.
The action will come in October when the report is in our hands. It's been through legal review, and at that point, we'll have a public hearing.
Thank you.
To me, it seems would be disingenuous not to take in the public comment. Or,
That's why I'm recommending Thursday.
we want to, I don't know if there's gonna be any new revelation, but,
People may say
They could.
something that
yeah, we want to give
we
them.
always want to listen to the public.
Exactly, so, somebody have,
Just one quick
Oh,
question,
sorry.
a comment. You might want to put a little glossary in there to tell people what these acronyms are.
It's typically part of a report.
You're gonna have.
That's his department.
that's him.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
People there tomorrow are gonna make you feel kind of stupid because they're not. Just
Well, that's why I brought up
You
wastewater,
guys.
yeah. Raw water, waste, I'm just trying to help clarify. Auburn Lake Trails.
Yeah, well, man.
Right. Do the best you can, Sanjay, at spelling things out where, red bars versus green, things like that.
Can I suggest bringing a pencil sharpener to sharpen that pencil real fine point?
You gotta keep.
Okay.
Not taking too much to the public.
All right, are there any board members wishing to deliver any closing comments? And I guess they're done. Okay, would that include some potential board meeting follow-up at the end of Thursday then?
Thursday is the board meeting.
Thursday, you would have that.
It's a mandatory meeting for all board members.
It's a special meeting that's been noticed under the Brown Act, yes.
Okay.
It's not mandatory, but it's.
It's mandatory as every other board meeting, put it that way.
Oh,
Motion to adjourn.
Finally, can we make one final effort to notify the public? If it sounds like there's can we do something?
I'm gonna
Send
do
out
that
a water
soon.
chart.
I'm gonna do the Facebook. this
Okay,
week.
okay.
Yeah, we'll send out a
Yeah,
notification. I'll have them send it out tonight.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
We have a motion. We have a motion for Richard
Second.
Thornhill.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Meeting adjourned.